quiet act of courage can echo louder than silence and help others find their voice. Welcome to Echoes of the Past. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful journeys. They say America is the land of opportunities. That here, if you work hard, you'll get what you deserve. When I stepped off that bus in Arizona with my daughter Sophia's hand clutched in mine, that phrase echoed in my mind, over and over again. We had 2 backpacks, $340 in cash, and a folded paper with an address scribbled in blue ink. The only contact I had. A friend of a friend. She worked nights cleaning a local school and promised me, "They always need help. You'll find something." I remember Sophia's eyes, wide, alert, tired. She was 9. She held her stuffed animal like a shield. I whispered to her, "This is our new home, mija. We'll be okay." The room we rented was in a basement, no windows, a mattress on the floor, a flickering light overhead, and a tiny fan that only worked if you held the cord just right. But I told Sophia it was cozy. I cooked rice and beans on a small hot plate and made her laugh with stories from back home, from Guatemala, like it was a fairy tale, not the place we'd fled. I started working at the school 3 weeks later. Nights, quiet halls, the smell of old books and bleach. I cleaned classrooms, bathrooms, hallways. I wore gloves that were too big and shoes that pinched. But I was grateful. No one looked at me. Not really. They nodded sometimes, said thank you out of politeness, but I was invisible, and that was safe. Sophia started attending the same school. I told her to smile, to try hard, to speak English as much as possible. But after the 2nd week, she came home quiet. Her backpack felt heavier than usual. When I asked how school was, she just shrugged. Okay. I knew that answer. I'd used it my whole life. It means, I don't want to talk about it. It means, I don't know how to explain what's happening inside me. That night, I sat by her bed after she fell asleep. I watched her tiny face and thought, did I do the right thing? Did I bring her here for a better future? Or did I just move the shadows with us? It started with her lunch. I packed Sophia tamales, her favorite, wrapped in banana leaves, just like back home. Warm, comforting, something to remind her who she is. She came back that day with the lunch untouched, her eyes red. They said it smelled weird, she whispered. They laughed at me. I wanted to storm into that classroom, to tell those children and their parents about the hands that made those tamales, the love in every bite. But I didn't, because I knew. Here, you keep your head down. You don't cause trouble. You're lucky just to be here. I told her, it's okay, mija. Next time I'll pack a sandwich. I hated myself for that. The next day, she asked if she could eat in the bathroom. Said she didn't want to be stared at. And I realized the shadows I thought we left behind had followed us here. Just dressed differently, softer, but just as sharp. At night, I scrubbed floors while the walls echoed with children's laughter from earlier that day. I emptied trash cans filled with crumpled worksheets, broken pencils, forgotten snacks. No one saw me. I moved from room to room like a ghost. But one evening, as I was wiping down a desk, I saw a sticky note left behind. In messy, childlike writing, it said, "Sophia talks funny." And next to it, someone had drawn a sad face. I sat down on that tiny chair and stared at the note. I don't know how long I stayed there. My hands trembled. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay next to Sophia, listening to her breathe, wondering if I had made a mistake coming here. wondering if silence was really safer or just easier. She was becoming small, quieter, afraid to be seen, and I was starting to forget my own voice. It started with a letter. It didn't matter that my English was shaky, like a three-legged chair ready to tip. I sat at the kitchen table late at night, long after Sophia had fallen asleep, typing each sentence into an online translator. I wrote slowly, carefully, my fingers trembling. I didn't write as a janitor. I wrote as a mother, as someone tired of being invisible. My daughter Sophia feels excluded in your school. She is being mocked because of the food she brings, because of the way she talks. I clean the school every night. I see the kindness in some places and the silence in others. I hope you listen, because I believe this school can do better. I read the letter over and over again. I didn't know if I should send it, didn't know who to give it to. A teacher, the principal, maybe just leave a copy in the staff lounge, like an anonymous whisper. I printed it, held the paper in my shaking hands. My heart thudded in my ears as I slipped it onto a desk in the lounge where no one ever really noticed me. The next morning, I expected anything. Maybe to be fired, maybe to be mocked. But nothing happened. A week passed. Silence. I almost regretted it. Thought I'd made a mistake. That speaking up only made things worse. Then one day, a teacher, Miss Jenkins, stopped me in the hallway. "Are you Sophia's mum?" I nodded, unsure what was coming. She smiled, warm but tinged with sadness. I read the letter. It really moved me. I didn't know she was going through that. I couldn't find the words. I just nodded, my throat tight. "I have a student from Syria. Same thing. Accent, different lunch, always trying to disappear. We need to talk about this more. Thank you for starting that conversation." It was a crack in the wall, a thin shaft of light. I didn't know if it would change anything, but for the first time, someone had listened. A week later, Sophia came home with a card. "To Sophia, I like your hair, and your lunch smells better than mine. Mia." I held it in my hands like a treasure. So small, and yet it meant everything. Later, I found out that Miss Jenkins had led a class discussion about different cultures and respect. Sophia had even stood up and told the class about our traditions. I cried, from pride, from pain, from the strange, powerful realization that maybe, just maybe, we weren't shadows after all. But with that light came a new fear. What if I got fired? Mrs. Brenner, the head of maintenance, started looking at me differently, colder, like I'd broken an unspoken rule. "You're the cleaner. Stay quiet." But there was no going back. For the first time, I felt like I had a right to speak, even if my accent was thick, even if my words weren't perfect. And I decided I wouldn't hide anymore. They called me into the office. No warning, no explanation, just a short note left on the locker room bench. "Marta, please come to the administration office before your shift." I sat in the reception area with sweaty palms. Mrs. Brenner stood by the window, arms crossed. The room smelled like coffee and something sterile, like a hospital. When she finally turned to me, her eyes were cold. "Marta," she began, overly polite, "we appreciate your work here, but lately there have been reports, concerns, that you've been interfering with the school environment." I didn't understand at first. "You've been leaving notes, causing unnecessary attention. It's creating discomfort." I tried to speak. I wanted to say I was a mother, that I had no choice, that I only wanted my daughter to feel safe. "You're a good worker," she continued, but we'll need to reevaluate your position, temporarily, until things settle down. I left that office feeling like my wings had been clipped. This wasn't just a job, it was our oxygen. Without it, how would I pay for rent, food, the bus pass for Sophia? I walked home, for hours, through wind, through traffic, through a storm of thoughts. In my head, one phrase kept echoing. You should have kept quiet. You should have stayed invisible. Sophia noticed right away. You're not working today, she asked, her eyes searching mine. I didn't know how to answer. How do you explain to a child that sometimes honesty costs more than silence? I have the day off, I lied. She hugged me. Cool. Then you can help me with my school project. We're writing about our parents. I wrote about you. About me? She nodded. I said you clean schools, but you're also brave. And you helped one girl not feel ashamed of her accent. I looked at her, this little girl who saw more than most adults ever would, and felt something twist inside me. Maybe I lost my job. Maybe we'd get kicked out. Maybe things were about to get much, much harder. But if my daughter believed I was brave, then maybe I did the right thing. Sometimes light burns. Sometimes it blinds. But without it, you can't see the road. You can't even see yourself. We moved out 3 weeks later. The landlord apologized, said she couldn't keep us without a steady income. I didn't blame her. She was just like me, trying to survive. Just another person in the system, caught between rules and needs. We moved into a women's shelter. Not what I dreamed of. Not what I imagined when I packed our bags back in Guatemala. White walls, shared kitchen, thin mattresses. But Sophia was with me, and we had time. I found work with a small cleaning company. Harder work, homes, apartments, 3 or 4 a day. But I wasn't alone. One of the women there, Aisha, was from Somalia. We didn't need to explain much to understand each other. When I told her why I lost my job, she nodded. I spoke up once too, she said. Only once. Then I learned, you choose, truth or bread. But then she added softly, but your daughter saw it. She'll remember it. And I realized, maybe that's the point. Sometimes we speak not for ourselves, but for the ones who come after. 2 months passed. One evening, when I picked Sophia up from school, someone called my name. It was Miss Jenkins. I have some news, she said. We're starting a new after-school group, Culture Bridge, for kids from immigrant families. And I'd love for you to come to our first meeting, share your story. I almost said no. What could I possibly share? I'm just the woman with a mop. But then I thought about that letter, about Mia's card, about the way Sophia looked at me when she called me brave. So I said yes. There were only 8 people at the meeting, but I told my story, about leaving home, about fear, about trying to be heard. And they listened. One father from Venezuela came up afterward and said, "You said everything I've been too scared to say." I walked out of that meeting with something new in my chest, not pride, exactly, but a quiet strength. I was still a shadow. But now, I could move, I could speak, I could choose who to follow. Sophia started writing little stories about girls afraid to speak, who find their voice, about moms who aren't superheroes, but who still save the day. When I asked her why she writes those stories, she said, because people need them, so no one feels invisible. I don't know how our story ends. We still live modestly. I still count every dollar. But one thing's different now. I'm not afraid anymore. Not of being seen, not of being heard, because even the smallest shadow can remind the world there's still light. If this story spoke to you, like, share, and subscribe for more on Echoes of the Past.